Welcome to Daily English Stories. Every story hides a world. Some inspire, some haunt, some stay forever. Chapter 1. The Careless Days. Arham was only 20, and to him the world felt slow and forgiving. Mornings were never mornings for him. They began when the sun was already high in the sky, and the sounds of life outside his window had been going on for hours. His alarm clock would ring at 7, then 8, then 9, until finally he would silence it at 10 and roll back into bed with a lazy stretch. Books lay scattered on his study table, some half read, some never opened. There were sticky notes with reminders: submit assignment, pay electricity bill, call about internship, but they were yellowing at the corners, reminders of promises he kept making to himself and breaking just as easily. "I'll do it tomorrow," he would say, sipping tea on the balcony, scrolling endlessly on his phone as hours melted into each other. His mother would often call from the kitchen, "Arham, it's almost noon. You're wasting your day." He would reply with a grin she couldn't see, "Relax, Ami. There's always time." And that's how his days passed. Slow, easy, comfortable. He would meet friends late at night, spend hours talking about dreams he never worked on, and return home when the city was asleep, only to waste another morning under the warm comfort of his blanket. Sometimes he watched the people outside his apartment, the shopkeeper opening his store at dawn, the children running to school with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders, the milkman delivering bottles while the streets were still cool. They moved with purpose, with rhythm, while Arham felt like a stone in a flowing river, unmoving as time rushed around him. There were moments, fleeting but sharp, when something inside him would whisper, "What are you doing with your days?" But he would shrug it off, laughing to himself. "I'm young. I have years ahead of me." His father, who left early for work every morning, rarely said much, but one evening at dinner he spoke quietly, "Arham, time doesn't wait for anyone." Arham nodded politely, but the words barely touched him. He was too caught up in the illusion that life was endless and opportunities would keep circling back like seasons. Yet, even in those careless days, there were small signs that things were slipping. His grades were falling, deadlines kept passing unnoticed, and friends stopped relying on him because he was never on time. Still, he smiled through it all, convincing himself it wasn't serious. "There's always tomorrow," he repeated like a charm, not realizing that tomorrow was quietly turning into yesterday over and over again. On nights when he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he sometimes imagined a clock ticking loudly somewhere far away, counting seconds he could never get back. But then he would reach for his phone, distract himself with videos and messages, and let the unease fade into sleep. Arham didn't know it yet, but these careless days were planting seeds. Seeds that would soon show him what it truly meant to lose something you can never recover. For now, though, he was still smiling lazily at the world, unaware that time was silently slipping through his open hands like grains of sand. Chapter 2. The Harsh Lesson. It was a bright Thursday morning when Arham woke up late again. The sunlight pouring through the window felt unusually sharp, but he ignored it, stretching lazily before reaching for his phone. A flood of unread messages filled the screen, classmates reminding each other about the final exam that started at 9 o'clock sharp. He glanced at the clock on his table. It was already 9:30. For a moment, He froze. His heart began to race, his mind scrambling for a plan. He jumped out of bed, pulling on his jeans and grabbing his bag. But deep down, he knew there was no way to make it on time. By the time he reached campus, the classroom door was closed, and the long hallway was silent. Through the glass window, he could see students bent over their answer sheets, pens scratching furiously. The invigilator at the door shook his head gently. "You're too late, Arham. The rules are clear." Arham stood there, breathless and speechless, feeling the weight of his own choices pressed down on his shoulders. The paper that could have secured his future was now out of reach, not because he lacked intelligence or skill, but because he had let time slip through his fingers. He walked out of the building slowly, each step echoing in the empty corridor. Outside, the world went on as usual. Students chatting in the courtyard, leaves falling from the old neem tree, a distant bell ringing for the next class. But inside him, something felt broken. That evening, as he sat on the rooftop of his home, his friend Rohan called. "Arham, where were you today? We didn't see you in the exam hall." I woke up late," Arham admitted, his voice low. There was a long silence on the other end before Rohan spoke again, softly but firmly. "You're wasting your time, Yar. You're wasting yourself. Do you even care where you're heading?" Those words hit harder than he expected. They lingered in his mind like an echo. He tried to laugh it off, but the laugh never came. Instead, he sat there under the evening sky, staring at the streaks of orange fading into gray. And for the first time, he felt the sting of regret burn deep in his chest. Images flashed through his mind, his father's quiet warnings, his mother's tired sighs, the countless mornings he had let slip away. He thought about all the moments he had promised himself. "I'll do it tomorrow," and how tomorrow had betrayed him again and again. The city lights blinked on one by one, but he didn't move. The rooftop was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic and the ticking of the watch on his wrist, a sound he had never really noticed before. Each tick seemed louder, heavier, like a reminder that time was not infinite. It was moving, always moving, and he was the one standing still. That night, lying in bed, he couldn't fall asleep. His mind replayed the day like a movie he didn't want to watch, but couldn't turn off. He realized something simple, yet powerful. Time was not waiting for him, and every careless choice was carving a future he might not want. For the first time, Arham asked himself a question he had always avoided. What am I doing with my life? And for the first time, he didn't have an answer. Chapter 3. A New Beginning. The next morning, Arham woke up before his alarm. For a moment he lay still, listening to the early sounds of the city. Birds calling out to each other, a milkman's cycle bell, the distant honk of a bus. The light filtering through his curtains felt softer, almost new, as if the world itself was giving him another chance. He sat up and looked at his desk. The books that had been gathering dust now seemed to wait for him, patient but hopeful. He picked up a notebook and tore out the old forgotten reminders, replacing them with a fresh page. At the top, he wrote in bold letters, "My time starts today." From that day forward, Arham began to plan his hours. He set a simple routine. Wake up at 6, study for 2 hours before breakfast, finish tasks before evening. It wasn't easy at first. His body resisted the early mornings, and old habits tugged at him like heavy chains. But every time he felt like giving in, He remembered that locked classroom door, the weight of that missed exam, and the words of his friend, "You're wasting yourself." Slowly, change began to show itself in small, bright ways. He started completing assignments before deadlines, and teachers began to notice. "Good work, Arham," they said, and each word felt like a step forward. His grades improved, not overnight, but little by little, like a plant pushing through hard soil toward the sun. His parents noticed, too. His mother would smile quietly as she passed by his room in the early hours, seeing the light on and the sound of a pen scratching paper. His father, usually reserved, placed a hand on his shoulder one evening and said simply, "I'm proud of you." Those words warmed him more than he could explain. Arham also found new joy in small things. Morning walks when the air was cool and fresh, reading under the golden glow of a desk lamp late in the evening, keeping promises to himself, and feeling the quiet satisfaction that came with it. The same clock that once felt like an enemy now felt like a guide, its steady ticking a reminder that every second counted. Months later, when another important exam came, Arham walked into the hall early, calm and ready. As he sat down, he looked around at the anxious faces and felt something he hadn't felt before, a quiet confidence. He wasn't just prepared for the test. He was prepared for life in a way he hadn't been before. When the final bell rang that day and he stepped out into the sunlight, he paused for a moment. He watched people hurrying about, each carrying their own stories, their own moments slipping by. He smiled softly to himself, feeling the truth settle deep in his heart. Time is a treasure, and once it's gone, it never comes back. As he walked home, the streets seemed brighter, the sounds sharper, the world alive in a way he had never noticed. He knew he couldn't change the careless days behind him, but he also knew something far more important. He could shape the days ahead. With each step, he carried the hard-earned lesson. Time is precious, and this time he wouldn't let it slip away again.